everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this cabled pillowcase. So this one is knit. So what you need to know before watching this video is just how to cast on, knit, and purl, and then the rest I'll show you along the way. So we're going to start off casting on. This piece is knit flat. So we're going to cast on, then I'm going to show you the cable repeat, which we just go over and over again until we reach our desired length. We bind off, and then I'm going to show you how I seam it together and overlap the two pieces with buttons so that it creates a cute back. And also inside I just have a regular pillow form inside, so you just need one of those as well. So yeah, I think these make great gift knits. This one's actually just for my apartment, but it's really easy to just find some bulky weight yarn that matches your apartment and then make one of these. They're really in style right now, so I thought this would be a fun video. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them down below. You're also going to find the full written version of this pattern down in the description box, so feel free to check that out. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. The materials you need for this project are scissors, a cable needle, a size 13 knitting needle, and this one is knit flat. I just prefer to use circular knitting needles when knitting, but you can use straight or circular knitting needles. Again, a size US 13. And then this is the pillow form I'm using. I got this one off of Amazon. It is, should say someone here, 16 inches by 16 inches. And I found this pillow insert works really well, so I'll be sure to link this one down below with the rest of the materials. I'm going to be using this Stitch Studio by Nicole yarn. This yarn is super bulky, and it recommends a size US 13, which is the size I'm using for this project. And in total, to make my size pillow, I used one ball of this yarn. So one ball of this yarn is 260 yards. And this colorway is Mauve. To start off, I'm going to use the long tail cast on method to cast on a total of 44 stitches. And for this project, you can use any cast on method you'd like. This one is just my preferred cast on method. Now that I've finished casting on, I'm ready to begin my first row. So down in the description box below, you're going to find the full written version of this pattern. And the pattern's going to come two versions. There's either going to be each row written out, or there's also a charted version. So whichever you prefer to follow. So the pattern on this first row, I'll put it along the bottom of the screen too, so it's easier to follow what I'm saying. But it's purl 9, knit 9, purl 8, knit 9, and then purl 9. Now I finished going across row 1, and this is going to be the front side of our work. So on each set of these 9 knit stitches is where we're going to begin cabling later on. Now I'm ready to begin row 2. So I just turn my work. So this row is going to be the opposite. It's going to be knit 9, purl 9, knit 8, purl 9, knit 9. Now row 3 is the same as row 1, so I'm going to purl 9, knit 9, purl 8, knit 9, purl 9. And the reason we're doing all these setup rows before we start the cable is because if you do the cable too close to the cast on, you get a twist in the base of your fabric, and I want to prevent that and have it lay flat, so we're just doing all these little setup rows first. So now I'm going to work row 3. Now the last setup row before we begin cabling is just row 4, which is a repeat of row 2. So I'm going to knit 9, purl 9, knit 8, purl 9, knit 9. For the first cable row, which is row 5, I'm first going to purl 9, and then once I get to that knit portion is where I'm going to begin the cable. So for this first cable, I'm going to take the next 3 stitches and slide them onto my cable needle. And now I'm going to hold them in the front of my work. I'm going to knit into the next 3 stitches on my left-hand needle. And now I'm going to knit the 3 stitches from my cable needle. There are 3 more knit stitches in this section, so I'm going to knit the next 3. Purl the 8 center stitches. And now in this knit portion, I'm again going to slip the first 3 stitches onto my cable needle, hold them in front, knit 3 stitches for my left-hand needle, then knit the 3 stitches from my cable needle. Now again, I'm going to knit the last 3 stitches in that little portion. And then purl the remaining 9 stitches. Once I finish row 5, I'm now just going to work 3 rows in pattern. So what that means is I'm just going to work knit stitches wherever there's knit stitches below it, and then purl stitches wherever there's purl stitches below it for 3 rows. And then once I'm back to row 9, I'm going to show you the next cable stitch. But for right now, I'm just going to put up on the screen what the next 3 rows are written out. I'm back to row 9, and I know I'm on the side I want to cable on again because I can see my first cable down here at the bottom. So to start out row 9, I'm going to purl across the first 9 stitches, and now I'm going to knit the first 3 stitches. Now I'm going to take my cable needle and slide the next 3 stitches, then hold them in the back, knit the next 3 stitches from my left-hand needle, and now knit the 3 stitches from my cable needle. I'm going to purl the center 8 stitches. I'm going to knit the next 3 stitches. Take the next 3 stitches from my left-hand needle, slide them onto the cable needle, hold them in the back of my work, knit 3 stitches from my left hand needle, and now knit the 3 stitches from my cable needle. Now lastly, I'm going to purl the remaining 9 stitches. Now that we finished row 9, we're ready to be in our repeats. So the repeat here goes from row 2 through row 9. The reason we don't repeat row 1 is because row 1 was just a setup row. So again, you're going to want to repeat rows 2 through 9 over and over again, and the full length you're going to want to achieve is 34 inches. So I typically measure that from the bottom edge to the bottom of my cord or knitting needle. And when you finish knitting at that 34 inches, you're going to want to be on either a row 4 or a row 8. So basically you want to finish 1 row before you would cable. So I'll catch back up with you once I've knit the 34 inches and I've just finished a row 4 or a row 8. So I just finished knitting my 34 inches. And I finished on a row where the next row when I went across here, I would have cabled. So I'm basically like 1 row before my next cable. And now I'm just going to cast off. I'm going to cast off in pattern. So I'm going to purl the first stitch, purl the second stitch, and now take that first stitch on the right needle, pass it up, over, and off the needle. So I just cast off 1. The next stitch on my left hand needle is another purl stitch. So again, I'm going to purl that stitch and now pass the previous stitch on my right hand needle up, over, and off. Again, the next stitch on my left hand needle is a purl stitch. So I'm going to follow the same steps again. And I'm going to keep on doing this until the next stitch on my left hand needle is a knit stitch. Now my next stitch is a knit stitch, so I'm just going to bring my yarn to the back and repeat the same steps where I knit the next stitch from my left needle, then slide the previous stitch up, over, and off. So you just want to keep on working in pattern by doing whatever the stitch is that's on your left hand needle. So knit stitches are the ones without the bumps in front, and then the purl stitches are the ones with the bumps. So now I'm going to continue going all the way across this row, casting off in the pattern. Once you only have 1 stitch remaining on your right needle, I just pull on that stitch, take my needle out, and now I'm going to cut my yarn. I usually leave about an 8 to 10 inch tail. And then lastly, thread the tail through that loop. To seam the pillow, I'm going to be using a tapestry needle, 4 removable stitch markers, and these are just so I can hold it in place and make sure it doesn't twist or anything as I'm seaming it, a ruler, and then lastly a pair of scissors. So to start figuring out how to seam it, start with your pillowcase laying flat on a table with the cable stitch down. And now you want to take your 2 ends and fold them in towards each other. And it doesn't matter which end ends up on top. Now I like to make sure that the sides line up for just about 3 inches. So I'm just going to use my ruler to make sure I'm getting 3 inches. Then I'm going to mark that 3-inch spot with a stitch marker. So first put it through the bottom layer and then line up the top corner right in that same place. gonna turn and do the same thing on the other side. I need 3 inches. And then again, line up the top corner, right where that stitch marker is. And now I'm gonna take the tail and I'm gonna seam these 2 pieces together all the way along this very most outer edge. And I wanna make sure I stay close to this edge because eventually we're gonna have to tuck this inside the pillow and I don't want there to be a big bump. So I'm actually just gonna use the little bits of tail that I have left. And thread my tapestry needle. And again, I'm gonna wanna go as close to the edge as possible. And this can be really just roughly done because this is all gonna be on the inside of the pillow. And once I finish, I'm going to take off the stitch marker. And now I'm going to tie that in place to secure it. So I'm just going to loop under any one of those strands that's towards the end. And I'm also just going to weave in this end while I'm over here. And now I'm going to repeat the same process on the second side. The next thing I want to do is I just want to make sure that this overlap is right in the center. So that looks like a good spot. And now I'm just going to take the little stitch markers again and just hold the 2 sides together in place. I'm going to cut myself a strand of yarn, and I always like to have extra, so probably going to cut mine about 1 yard long. Thread my tapestry needle, and now pick one of the sides to start seaming. So when I lay down the pillow, I'm actually going to want to fold it in half the other way now. So that basically I'm looking at one seam right up the center. And I'm going to want to start at the bottom corner. So I'm actually just going to tie this piece of yarn into the center. And this will be on the inside of the pillow, so it doesn't matter how nice it looks. And I'm going to thread my yarn to the outside. The hardest part is down here at the bottom. So what I like to do is I like to fold the 2 edges so that they're flat against each other. And now I'm just going to take my yarn from the one side and thread it underneath the bottommost purl stitch on the other side. Now go back over to the other side and just keep on going underneath each of the purl stitches. And I don't like to get the one that's directly on the edge. So you see how there's a bump there, which is like right up on this edge. I like to go 1 in. And now I'm going to continue seaming all the way up this side. Another thing that I do too is I actually go a couple stitches before I pull the yarn a little tighter. So the goal is to make it kind of blend in as if they are just more purl stitches. And there isn't a seam going up along here. But the seam will actually add a little bit of structure. So there's just a little bit I've done so far, and you can see that it just blends right in with the rest of the purl stitches. Once you get to the portion with the 2 layers, you just want to keep on going, only picking up the 1 stitch in that's on this top layer. So I'm actually just first going to start on the cast on edge, and then start again, picking up only the purl stitch on the top layer. As I get closer to the end, I'm going to keep going as far up as I can get. And now for this last one, I'm actually just going to kind of grab onto that last little corner stitch and then thread my needle to the inside. I want to make it so that the corner doesn't have a big point. And now again, I'm just going to tie this in place on the inside and then weave in the end. Now I'm going to repeat those same steps on the second side. The final step is to sew on the buttons. So the buttons I've chosen, I picked up at Joann's, and these ones measure 1 inch by 1 3/4 inches. And you can check if your button will work by just finding one of the holes in your work. So there's a hole every time there's a cable cross, and just see if the button will fit through the holes. So this one does. I also just thought this shape would look cute. So I picked up 2 of these. You're gonna need a pair of scissors. Then you're gonna need a tapestry needle. And I did make sure that the tapestry needle fit through the buttons. And then lastly, I have some thread. You can use whatever color you'd like. This is just one I had on hand, so I decided to use it for this project. I think it'll blend in very nicely. So now I'm gonna get started sewing on the buttons. The buttons are gonna be sewn on to the bottom layer, so I just pick up that top flap. And the place I like to sew them on is right up here. So essentially you have this first cable, and then you have the second cable. So I like to do it right in the middle where there's just solid fabric right there. So I'm gonna sew on my first button right there, and then my second button on the exact same place on the other side. So it's kind of like you have solid fabric down here, you have a cable hole right there, and then it's right above that is where I like to sew them on. So I'm gonna sew these on using my thread. So first I just wanna tie the thread onto the work to get it started. So I'm just gonna mark this with both of my fingers and then secure the thread by just tying it on there. And again, this is the inside of the pillow, so it doesn't have to be all that neat. Just tie it a bunch of times. Okay, now I'm going to weave my tapestry needle back through and sew on my button. Once I'm finished, I'm again just going to tie a knot and now sew on the second button. And now I'm going to add my pillow form to the project. This pillow form I got off of Amazon, and I'll link this one down below. When you first put it on, you're going to have to tug at the back of the pillowcase a little bit just to give yourself a little extra room. And now you want to close it up. And you can choose any one of the holes that are formed from the cable on the other side. So I'm just going to try the first one. And the nice thing about this method too is that as the pillowcase stretches, I found that with a lot of the store-bought ones, the case kind of grows as it gets a little older. So you can always tighten it up by just moving the buttons to a different spot. So yes, there are my finished buttons on the back of the pillow. Here is my finished pillowcase. Down in the description box below, you're going to find the full written version of this pattern. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them down below. If you're new to my channel and enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.